step by step in the last one, and you have a basic understanding of how to navigate around inside of Tinkercad. You have a basic understanding of where to find shapes, um, how to manipulate those shapes, both in terms of scale and also direction and angle and things like that. So now we're going to use a design I put together using popsicle sticks to create a prototype for a wind turbine. And you might see this used, as potentially, as low grade as grade 5, right up through to grade 8. You can do it younger for sure, but that's where I would start for this one. So I'm going to just click on Tinker this. So this is a public facing file. If you search for me, Mr. G, you should be able to find this in there, but otherwise there's also a link in the presentation from today. So you can click on Tinker this. And I'm just going to walk you around a bit to sort of give you a sense of how this was put together. Again, we have our different views, which really matter, right? So right now, I'm in orthographic view. So if I choose any of the directions that are in the center of the cube, so in other words, top, bottom, back, left, right, front, I'm going to get a head-on view. Um, And again, if I use my right mouse, my right button on my mouse, I can change the perspective view of my camera. So in other words, I can change the camera angle from which I'm viewing this object. But you'll notice it looks kind of funny. It looks out of perspective. And that's so if you are not viewing an object directly head on, you're going to want to switch back to perspective view. And now you'll notice it makes more sense. Again, I can use my middle scroll wheel on my mouse. If I click it and hold down, I can pan. Again, this is not changing the object, just changing the angle from which I see the object, or I can scroll. And you'll notice, so right now my mouse is over to the right of the object. If I scroll over there, you'll notice the camera is starting to zoom in to wherever my mouse is pointing. So if I wanted to, let's say I wanted to more closely study this little gear mechanism in here, I'm going to put my mouse right over top of the area I want to zoom into, and I can use my scroll wheel to zoom in. And now it only zooms in to the particular area I'm interested in. So in this case, we might be in grade, 6, 7, or 8, building, or even grade 4 or 5, building some sort of gearbox. In particular, grade 4, you might study gear ratios, and sort of looking at, what happens when we, uh, pardon me, when we go from a larger gear to a smaller gear, and what can we learn in terms of mechanical advantage if we were to propose that this turbine would spin, in turn spinning this larger gear, which is connected to this smaller gear, and this smaller gear, which is connected to this motor. We could sort of propose some questions to our students and ask, what do we think is going to happen, or what could happen, or what should happen. And of course, as you build that understanding up, you'll start, your students will hopefully start to recognize that when I go from a larger gear to a smaller gear in this rotational example, as the wind spins this turbine, this larger gear is going to increase the amount of work that is produced through this gear ratio of going from a larger gear to a smaller gear. So that's kind of an interesting way you can visualize some of that learning within the context of using Tinkercad. Just show you quickly where, you know, in terms of this design, literally all of the objects in here were from, either searching through um, this right-hand side object here. So set of objects here. So if I click on the magnifying glass to search, and I can, again, you can find these through the menus, but sometimes it's just faster to search. So I'm going to search for popsicle, just hit enter, and you'll find I have a starred popsicle stick. Once I found it, I just click on the star, so it's easy to find later. And that's just a simple matter of dragging that over now. And so if I look at this popsicle stick, it's the exact same one I've used to create my frames over here. Just going to slide it in place, and I'll just sort of quickly show you how you might start to build it up. So starting with one popsicle stick, I can go over to my duplicate button and I click on that once, and you might sort of think, okay, well, I don't see that second popsicle stick. It's actually sitting directly in the same spot as the original. So I'm just going to zoom in a bit, and notice now I can drag that over. If I hold shift while I'm dragging, it'll keep it on the same plane and avoid some of the frustration that can happen when you're trying to move things around and can get a little lost in that 3D space. If I want to see the relative distance, I might go to my top view here, zoom out a bit. You'll see it's a little too close to zoom accurately, so I'm just going to move that and switch to my orthographic view. I'm going to hold down shift and select both popsicle sticks, just so we can see, in a relative sense, how close or far away they are from each other. You could, of course, measure that if you really wanted to. For the sake of digital prototyping, I'm just going to kind of work quickly and not get too hung up with their actual distance. I can also use, other kinds of measurement here, right? So let's say I wanted to quickly build this up. Now I'm going to select both at the same time. So I'm going to click, drag my mouse across both objects. They're both selected now. And I can even group those now. So now that becomes one object. So I select this, and now it's one object. So now that I've now that I've selected both objects and grouped them together, I'm going to hit duplicate. And again, there's now a second set of popsicle sticks um, that are in the exact same spot as the original two. However, if I choose this this rotational tool here, I can now take that duplicated set and they could be interlocking in a sense. And you could do this. This is absolutely a decent way to build with popsicle sticks. However, it's a little unrealistic because it would be very hard to create a set of popsicle sticks that go into another set like that. So if you wanted to be a little more literal, let's say, I could take one of my sets. So it doesn't really matter which one I select because they're both grouped. Both sets are grouped. Select one and drag one set up so that it sits just on top of the other set of popsicle sticks, which is really helpful. Now, if I want to make sure it's actually touching, I could grab my right view, go back to orthographic. Okay. And you can see it's actually, if I look here, it's sitting a little bit, it's kind of like floating, right? So I can bring those down just like that. So they're sitting on top, just like that. And so now I've sort of replicated the base of the frame that I've used over here. And you could imagine now, if I wanted to, I could quite easily switch to perspective view again, quite easily um, now group this whole thing together. So I'm going to select the whole thing. I'm going to click group. I'm going to click duplicate. And there, now I have that second row already coming up. And I could duplicate again. Okay. And then now I'm going to select again. And this time I'm going, oops, it didn't duplicate. Pardon me. Let me go back, click duplicate. And now I can take that second set um, and change the direction. So 90-degree turn and slide that back. I'm going to want to switch back over to my, oh, it did duplicate. It's just over there. Switch over to my front view and maybe I'll grab my handle here, bring that down. And I'm just going kind of fast here. You can be a lot more specific in where you're layering your things. Um, and now I could go over here again and hit duplicate again and just drag that one over here. Okay, and then I can take both. So now I'm going to select all the way here, click on duplicate and drag those up. Pardon me. Pardon me. Try that again. I'm going to go here, duplicate, drag over. I'm going to zoom in a bit, having a little bit of struggle here. Gonna duplicate, bring over. Here we go. This is a better angle from which to do this from. And now I'm going to select both of them and I'm going to duplicate again. This time I'm just going to grab the handle and this should pull them up nicely. There we go. And I've started to build a bit of that platform. You'll notice they're not completely in the right plane now. So they're kind of pushed a little back. So again, I'm going to switch to my right view and I'm going to click on one. Want to zoom in a bit. Sometimes it can be hard to select. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out. So I'm going to go back to perspective and I'm going to select all three shapes in that plane while holding shift, and that selects them all at the same time. You can see they're highlighted with a little blue outline over top. Now I'm going to switch to my right view, go back to orthographic, and I should be able to shift those over. Zoops. Let's try that again. So because they're very thin objects, it can be a little hard to grab the one you want. Try that again. Okay, so I've selected all three. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to group them. This will make it a lot easier. So now they're grouped. Now when I move one, they should all move. If I can get one, I'm going to go over here. And I'm just going to use my arrow keys. So sometimes when you can't select the way you want, you can just use your arrow keys and that will help you build that frame. Okay, so the last thing I'm just going to show you, I'm not going to show the design of the gear mechanism, but I'm going to show you how to access each of those objects. So where did I get the gears from? I went over to my search tool here. And in this case, I just clicked gear. And you'll see there's some different gear types here. I chose this gear as my basic gear. It matched the one that that looked the most similar to the gears I have in real life. Okay, so again, all the same tools work here. So I can rotate. If I hold down shift while I'm rotating, it will constrain that rotation to 90-degree, or actually even I think 45-degree increments. Again, the gear looks funny because I'm in orthographic mode. If I switch to perspective mode, it starts to look the way it should. And again, so some different things you can do with the gear in here. You can control what's called the pitch. Yeah, so there's some different ways of controlling the size. You can, of course, you can make weird gears. You could make a cam. Lots of different things you could do here. I'm going to go back to my original shape though. I can change the slope, which is kind of cool. So you can see that the way that impacted the design of the teeth. And in fact, this was too far. I've gone too far here. So I'm just going to undo that as well. You can increase and decrease the number of teeth. So if you're looking to play with a specific gear ratio, or you know the tooth count on your gear, I can change the height of the gear. And again, you could just eyeball this if you wanted. That's what I did for this design. And as well, the size of the hole in the middle of the gear. So let's say you're working with some wooden dowel that had a very specific diameter. You could start to design that shape in using a real scale to the kinds of materials you have available. So again, if I wanted more than one of these, I could hit duplicate. Now I've got two side by side that are the same size. And then I could change the number of teeth in the second gear. Okay, and move that over. And I could have this large gear to small gear relationship, something like that. And then in terms of the blade design, I can actually remember what I did now. Oh yeah, there it is. Windmill. That's not the one I wanted though. It was windmill. So I selected windmill. Should grab this green one. This is the one we used. So you can see how different my final shape looks from the one selected here, and that's because this again is has been designed to for you to be able to change the parameters. So what did I do here? I played with some of these. So the length of the blades, you can actually increase that even by manually pulling that out if you wanted. Okay. Then of course I also changed the color, so that's white now. As well, you can play with the point width. So you'll see that point in the middle of the blade. You can play with different widths, and all of these different parameters, if you were to build this in the physical world, would catch wind differently, and you could anticipate or make some anticipations based on what you think's going to happen, and then try and build them and test them out in real life and see how well your digital prototype matched up with the one you were able to build in real life. And of course, you can also change the angles of the blades here, which is super important when you're thinking about turbine design. Okay, so that's pretty much what we're going to look at today. And so if you want to give this a try, you have basically all the different available materials to go and try and do the same thing.